Hello everyone. Today I am going to start a new topic of chapter 12, that is agents of pollination. As we have discussed in the last video about the pollination, and there are two types of pollination, self pollination and cross pollination. Self pollination means when the pollen grain they transfer from anther to stigma in the same flower or on the same plant. And cross pollination means the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma between the two different plants of the same kind. So maybe we are saying the cross pollination, it occurs between the two plants, they are of the same kind, and these two plants they may be occur in the different places. So how the pollen grain they will transfer to the from anther to the stigma. So there is a need of agent, so they can carry the pollen grains from anther to stigma from one plant to another plant. So in the case of cross pollination, there is a need of agents. So our next topic is agents of pollination. So there are different agents for pollination. So they can carry the pollen grains from anther to stigma from one plant to another plant. The first is pollination by insect. It means insect they also carry the pollen grains from anther to stigma. So pollination by insect, in this method or in this way, when the insects like butterflies, moth, wasp and honeybee, when they come on the flower or when they visit to the flower, the pollen grain they stick on their body. They come on the flower to for sucking the nectar. So in this way the pollen grain they stick on their body, and when same honeybee or wasp or moth or butterfly they visit to another flower, they visit to the female flower, so these pollen grain they dust on the stigma of the flower. So in this way the pollen grain they are transferred by the insect from anther to stigma from one plant to another plant. Some examples in which the pollination by insect occur: sweet pea, orchids and sunflower. In these plants the pollination it is done by insects. Second, pollination by animals. It means animals they also help in the pollination process. It means they also carry the pollen grains from one plant to another plant of the same kind. And animals also, and birds also, and so basically birds, most of the time birds they carry the pollen grains from one plant to another plant. So there are two birds basically, hummingbird or sunbird, they carry the pollen grains from anther to stigma from one plant to another plant. And in the case of pollination by animals or pollination by birds, the pollen grains and the flower they are attractive and they are bright red in color or yellow in color. They are brightly in color, so they can attract the birds. And in the same, in the insects also, the flowers they are attractive, they are bright red in color, brightly color, so they can attract the insects and birds. Next, pollination by wind. Pollination by wind, in some plants in some plant like wheat, rice and maize, pollen grain they are transferred by the wind from one plant to another plant. But there is some carefulness for in these plants, because wind they are carrying because wind is carrying the pollen grains from anther to stigma. So always these plants they produce a large number of pollen grains, because pollen grain they are transferring from one place to another place. So in the midway some pollen grain they may be damaged. So always the pollination by wind it is occurring in the some plant like wheat, rice and maize. So always they produce a large number of pollen grains. So because always pollination it's a chance process, it's not a always sure process, it's a chance process, because two plants they may be grow in a different places. So the pollen grain they may be transferred, it's not a sure process, so it's a chance process. Next is pollination by water. In some plants like in a water plants, aquatic plants like hydrilla and Vallisneria, in these plants the pollination it is done by water. It means these plants they release their pollen grains in the water, and with the help of water currents the pollen grains they transfer from one plant to another plant. So there are some agents of pollination. Thank you for watching my video.